Welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches making the big time where they're at. Today, our host, Coach Preston Peterson, interviews a high school strength coach who is creating a big time strength conditioning experience for their student athletes. Today's episode is sponsored by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr provides strength conditioning software to athletics programs around the country. Whether you write your own programs or want access to over 100 templates, TeamBuildr can make your program more efficient, more accountable, and smarter when it comes to measuring your team's effort in the weight room. Visit their website and start a 14-day free trial at teambuildr.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another week of the Big Time Strength Podcast. This week, I got to interview Coach Dave Jenkins. Coach is currently at Central Dewitt High School as a health teacher, but coaches football at North Scott High School. Coach also serves as the NHSSCA State Director for Iowa. Previously, he was the head strength coach at Bettendorf and Davenport West High School. Coach Jenkins was also an assistant strength coach with Hendrick Motorsports. Coach started in strength and conditioning as an intern with the University of Tennessee football team. In this episode, we discuss ways to develop leaders, how Coach acquires additional funding for his department. We talk a little about Coach's level system, and Coach lets us know what's new with Iowa NHSSCA. As always, please review and share the Big Time Strength Podcast if you enjoy the show. Now let's hear from Coach Dave Jenkins. Coach Jenkins, great to have you on the show. It's awesome to be able to talk to a fellow Iowa coach, and it's always fun to catch up again. I want to start out by asking, what you're up to right now, where you're at, what you're doing, and where you've been, kind of your strength and conditioning journey up to this point.
All right. I appreciate you having me on the show. It's awesome having another Iowa coach, like you said, that we can bounce ideas off of and be so close. Right now, I teach at Central Dewitt High School, a small school with about 400 to 500 students in it. And then I actually coach at another school, North Scott High School. I'm an assistant football coach down there. Some might recognize that name just because Tony Stewart, who is another prominent high school strength coach, he's down there at North Scott. So he and I are working together with that. Prior to being at DeWitt and North Scott, I was the head strength coach at Bettendorf High School, as well as Davenport West High School in Iowa. And then before that, I was actually out of the high school realm. I was in NASCAR, so I worked for Hendrick Motorsports and helped train the pit crews for guys like Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Casey Kane. So that was a really unique experience, and I gained a lot of valuable insight and information on training athletes, especially with heat training, and just seeing a different sport and a different perspective was really good for me. And then really I got my start in strength and conditioning when I was an intern at the University of Tennessee with Coach Ron McKeefrey. So that's been my background over the last 8 years or so, and I'm looking forward to just seeing where it goes.
That's a ton of great experience. And you talk about, just having a diversified background there. I'm sure it was crazy, doing some of the stuff for Hendrick Motorsports. What was something that stood out to you from that experience, working with NASCAR and some of those pit crews?
Well, with a lot of the pit crews, there was the old school thought they're just mechanics, and then they're coming over the wall and changing, and it was completely different. Most of those guys were Division I athletes. Some of them were former professional. I worked with multiple former NFL athletes while I was down there. And just the timing and training that goes in for those guys is unbelievable. They had a multi-million-dollar facility down there with, great equipment. We had an outdoor training facility with turf and a track and a sand training pit. And so we had tons of different bells and whistles we could use, but when I first went down there, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was just like training in the Division I environment.
That's amazing. Cool. That's had to lead into, just being a little bit different than high school athletics. What was it like when you made the transition to high school athletics? Maybe some experiences that stood out to you in that way.
I always knew I wanted to get back to the high school realm. Even when I first got into strength and conditioning, one of the conversations I had with Ron McKeefrey early on, I told him, I want to gain this experience. I want to learn from some high-level people. So learning from Ron at Tennessee was great, and then going to Hendrick was unexpected, but it turned out to be a great experience, and I learned a ton. especially as far as not overtraining my athletes, because those guys were just go, 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 go all the time for such a long season, from February all the way to November almost. That's what their season was. And so I think that was one piece of valuable information that I gained is not overtraining my athletes and how to get through those long seasons. I think that's actually carried over into some of my ability to work with multi-sport athletes who are going from one sport right into the next sport. I don't get caught up with them having to go, go, go in the weight room. I understand that it's a long process, and especially over the 4 years, it's more of a slow cooker process than a go, go, go right now and see the results.
Yeah, and one of the things that you talked about there is just like being able to see that transition from being all year round to the multi-sport athlete, and like being at a school with 400 to 500 students. A lot of your athletes, probably well over the majority, are multi-sport athletes. Is that an interesting dynamic? Does that make your job tough, or do you have a system that you've kind of developed to help supplement those athletes?
It does make it tough, but really what it all comes down to is the buy-in with the students and the relationships that you're going to build with them. They have to trust you and know that you have their best interest. And so, with my athletes, I'm not training my volleyball team really much different than I'm training my football team, because when it comes down to it, I'm not necessarily sport specific or program specific. I'm more principle specific. What types of things do we need to do to increase your ability to play your sport? And for most of the sports that we play, it comes down to, the ability to run, jump, change direction. And so we can look at that and say, look, these are the things we're doing to help you become better at your sport as far as running, jumping, change of direction. Now, when it comes to football and catching a ball, that's where your receiver coach is going to come and play. When it comes to volleyball and hitting a volleyball through the block or around the block, that's when your volleyball coach in practice is going to come into play. So as far as training the athletes, really just getting them to buy in and trust you is the biggest part of it. But training from one sport to the next, we usually just keep it right on going through the seasons. We'll change it up. At some points, we'll be training for strength. At some points, we might take it back a little bit and be doing some power, or maybe even getting ready for the postseason. But for the most part, it looks similar.
So what are some of the programming methodologies that you're using or that you follow that you've had success with? And what I kind of mean with that is, you're training these athletes, you've got the buy-in, and what's it look like to be in your weight room?
Well, we're very organized in the weight room. I'm probably a little bit too overly organized and a stickler from some of those standpoints. But some of the, I guess, quote-unquote systems we've used, I really like the tier system. Joe Kinn, he wrote a book about that a number of years ago, and many, many coaches use it today. But what I really like about it is it's a plug-and-play system. So I can have exercise such as a lower body lift, and I know we're going to be doing it for strength or for volume or for power, and now I can plug and play with different types of that lift. I can go with different variations. I can have a front squat. I can have a back squat. I could go with a single leg squat. And so I don't necessarily have to change up my programming all the time. Now, with that being said, going back to principles, I think, when you look at, okay, am I trying to develop speed here? Am I trying to develop power? Am I looking for strength? Are my football players, that's a population that's usually looking for size and hypertrophy. So what am I trying to do at this point? And so now I can start to change some of those sets and rep schemes. And I think Ryan Johnson up at Wayzata High School in Minnesota, he does a really good job with this. He's got just some very simple sets and rep schemes. It might be 4x6 or 3x12. And the kids can go right to their charts, and they know exactly how much weight they should be using based on their max load. So I try and simplify all of our programs down that way, where it can just be a plug and play with whatever exercises we're working with. And then depending on what result I want, now I can just look and see, okay, hey, here's the set and rep scheme that we want, and this is what you need to do. So Anything we can do to take the thinking out of it for them, I think is a good thing. We don't want them overthinking things on the football field or the volleyball court, and we don't want them overthinking things in the weight room either. So we want to make sure that we have those programs in place. And that's where I go with all of those different systems that I use, whether it be the tier system to go there, or just going from our rack stations, the systems we use there. A lot of times if we're at a rack, we probably have the first guy doing some type of core or mobility or stability. Second guy's probably doing some spotting. Third guy's doing the main lift there. If we have a fourth guy, might be doing some type of accessory lift. So having all those in place that's what you're really going to see when you come into the weight room with me.
So it sounds like you've got a system put together, and kids, when they come in, they know the expectation is going to be organization and being able to follow, the program probably to a T. It sounds like. What is your process for bringing in new people, right? So you got an athlete that's new to the weight room, new to your program, new to your culture. What's the process to getting them ingrained and buying into what you got going on?
That's one of the hardest things, I think, because if you really want to do it the right way, you have to start them at the base of your program, because as a strength coach, even though they might be coming from a school that has an excellent strength and conditioning program, you don't necessarily know how involved they've been with that program. You don't know what their background is, what their training age is. So realistically, I think you have to start at a training age of 0 with almost everyone that comes into your weight room. And for us, I have some different benchmarks and standards that we use. If they were coming into our weight room, they would start with our Block 0 program, body weight program. You got to be able to do body weight squats, goblet squats with, 50% of your body weight, or 25% of your body weight. Or if we're, doing some bench and going right down through our either before we had a saber club, we had a purple club, we had a gold club. So if you were going to be in the saber club, you need to be able to bench 70% of your body weight, or you need to be able to do 135 times 3. If you wanted to make it into our next club, which would be our purple club, you need to be able to bench 100% of your body weight, or be able to do 185 times 3. And these are male benchmarks. We would have some different benchmarks for our females. And then getting into our gold club would be the same thing. And then, as I said earlier, with the plug-and-play system and having different sets and reps, now I can have those all set up, and the kids know, hey, I'm a Block 0, or hey, I'm a saber club, I'm a purple, I'm a gold, and they know exactly what set and rep scheme they're on, and they know the lift that we're doing for that day. So that's kind of where we go with our programming and some of the programs I use.
That sounds like an awesome way to get somebody that's 14 years old coming into the weight room and progressing them all the way until they're 18. So that is one of the things that I found one of the coolest deals, I suppose, is being able to see an athlete that's young, inexperienced, and then 3 to 4 years later coming in and just killing it, doing a great job, understands the expectations and brings people along with them. What are some of the ways that you get people, you get your student athletes to buy in, as far as like being a part of a positive culture, being leaders, maybe at their rack or within their school or on their sport team? So just like that team camaraderie type of aspect.
Well, I think one, and this is a mistake a lot of people, they make, is if you want your athletes to be leaders, you have to give them opportunities to be leaders. And, that might look like taking the team and giving them a word each week, and they talk about that word and what it means to them. It might be letting them lead warm-ups. It might even be at the end of workout, they get to put on the gun show workout and tell everyone what they're doing for the day, for the last 5-10 minutes when we're going suns out, guns out. But doing different stuff like that, building up the team that way, giving them opportunities to be leaders and be in front of their peers, I think that's probably the most important aspect of it. But then we also try to have some other fun initiatives. We'll do competitions. We might have a 5-10-5 race at the end of the workout. We might put one of my favorites is to grab two bars and put 135 on each one of them. And you got one guy on one side, one guy on the other side, and they pick up the bars just like they're deadlifting the handles. And now they're just staring at each other, having a grip competition. And they're looking at each other. They got a bar in each hand and looking each other right in the eye. Who's going to be the last man standing? Sometimes I'll even take it as far as, hey, the team has to pick a side. Who do you think is going to win? If you're on the losing team side, you got 5 push-ups. We don't make it, too much of a consequence. We want it to be fun, but just doing some competitions like that. The other thing we do is trying to have some lifting clubs. I know lifting clubs and record boards, people are on one side or the other with those issues, but I like the idea of having some of those lifting clubs. The clubs I mentioned earlier, when you make the Sabre Club, you get a purple or you get a white Sabre Club t-shirt. When you make the purple club, you get a purple Sabre Club t-shirt. When you make the gold club, it's a very elite club. Only few have it, but they have that gold club t-shirt to show that, they've bought into the program. They're a leader in the program and in the weight room, and they've got some proof that they get to wear around. So just doing some different things like that, throwing in some competitions. I think that's a great way to build camaraderie and buy-in from the athletes.
Those sound very motivating to me. As I think back to when I was a student athlete, and what we did within our strength program was awesome when we do some of the record board stuff, and I understand the argument against, and then maybe the clubs, where you're getting that point where you get to reward some of the student athletes that, they are buying in and they've seen the results and that type of thing. I love that stuff. All of that, you talked about the t-shirts and stuff, all of that kind of comes with a little bit of a cost. What are you doing to acquire additional funding for the department? Maybe it's new equipment you're wanting, or maybe it's just a few t-shirts that you're able to give out when they hit that club. What are you doing for that to happen?
One fundraiser we try and do a lift-a-thon where we send the kids out into the community and we say, hey, would you be willing to donate a penny per pound or a nickel or a dime per pound? So we bring in some funds that way. We have a board outside of our weight room with sponsors. So every 2 years we go around and we update that board, and we have different levels of sponsorship for businesses in the community or even individuals in the community to give and donate and then have their name on that board and throughout the weight room. So I think some just different fundraising ideas that way. I'm very fortunate. I've been at some schools, Davenport West. Our booster club was phenomenal. When I got there, I asked for equipment and they gave me a substantial amount of equipment. Bettendorf, same thing, working in a very affluent community, and they were able to supply me with the things I needed. And same thing when I came to DeWitt. They were ready and willing to supply us with anything we needed. So I think using your booster club that way, and also most of us are now moving into a PE type setting where the strength coach is there during the day. So you need to start using some terminology and lingo such as standards-based grading or reference-based grading. Start using those types of terms in your everyday lingo with administrators. So now when you go to ask an administrator for something in the weight room, it's not the athletic coach who just happens to be a PE teacher asking for money. It's the PE teacher who's actually following some of the same grading policies and procedures and buying into what the school is doing academically and using some of those academic terms with them so that when they go to the school board or go to whoever else, now they can, say, hey, look, it's not just the athletes that are getting this. This is supporting our whole school and anyone that goes in there. So you have to be creative with some of those fundings, but I firmly believe when you start talking to administrators and you start using some of those academic terms, now you can really start to get them to buy in financially and give you a few extra dollars here and there.
Man, I'm totally on board with you with that. I totally believe, the weight room and being part of physical education man, it's got to be an extension of every other academic area. And one of the things that I've seen, at least at Mount Vernon, is the opportunity for teachers to, buy into what we're doing, because they know that that's for real. It's not where, we roll out a kickball or something like that. It's something that there's a progression, and we do have goals, and we're shooting for those things. And like you said, you're getting those terms thrown out there that they're a real thing, man. It's something that we're on this mission together as educators to help our student athletes, be successful, obviously within their athletics, but also their academics while they're in school. And then, it makes sense. That's why we're in it. That life is what we're really trying to prepare them for. So I think you're right on the right track with all that stuff, and I'm happy that you've got departments that are behind you and administrators that are behind you so much. So the namesake of the show is Big Time Strength, and the idea behind that is to find coaches that are just making the big time where they're at, no matter what position they're in. They're just going above and beyond for their student athletes to help them succeed. My question for you is, how are you going above and beyond? What are you doing to really help your athletes and be a big time strength coach?
Well, one, I love the name of the podcast, Frosty Westering, and the book that he wrote, Making the Big Time Where You Are. That's a great book. I wish I could say I had a signed copy personalized to me. I have the book. It's one of my favorite books, and it is a signed copy. It just happens to be a signed copy that I got when I purchased on Amazon, and it's signed to someone else. But that book is a great book. And I think for me, just understanding my mission and my calling, my faith is very important to me. My church and my being a Christian is a big thing for me. And I want to express that to my students. I don't want to just be a teacher. I want to be somebody that has an impact on their lives in a positive way. And that's why I said earlier, when I talked to Ron McKeefrey, when I first went into strength and conditioning, I knew I was going to go there, and I had opportunities to go to other college levels, but I always wanted to have an impact at the high school level. Outside of doing strength and conditioning, I'm our FCA, so Fellowship of Christian Athletes, huddle coach. So I'm trying to have an impact on their spiritual lives as well. But I just want to get to know my kids, and I think that should be every teacher. Doesn't matter what subject you're in. When my kids are walking through the hallways, I'm giving them high fives. I'm asking them who they are, how they are, asking them what they did on the weekends. I'm getting to know them as people, and I'm pretty laid back, more so than a lot of other teachers, because I want to get to know my students, and I don't want to be friends with them, but I want them to know that I'm there for them. You'll constantly, if you come in my hallway near my health classroom, I'm always telling kids I love them and everything that way. But yeah, just trying to make an impact on them outside of school, outside of athletics. I want them to know that athletics isn't who they are, it's what they do. And I'm going to love them no matter what happens, whether we win, lose, or anything else, that they're not going to be defined by that in my eyes, that they're bigger than that they're a bigger person, that there's more to them. So I think just building those relationships is probably the biggest thing I do, and working with our FCA groups.
Coach, that hits close to home. I think that you are making the big time where you're at, because you're doing just that. Anytime coaches are out there to build relationships and to work for something that's bigger than themselves is truly inspiring to me, and I know to so many other coaches also. It makes me happy that there's coaches out there that are doing it the way that you're doing it. So congrats on that, man. I really, really appreciate that. So far, man, you've talked about so much that you've been doing for your schools that you've been a part of. Now you've kind of taken it a step further a little bit, and you've gotten involved at the national level, and now you are the state representative for Iowa for the National High School Strength Coaches Association. And I just want you to give us the rundown of maybe some of the projects that you're working on for the NHSSCA, and then maybe some of the opportunities that people could do to get involved with the organization.
Yeah, the NHSSCA came about just a couple years ago, and it's actual high school strength coaches that know what other high school strength coaches are going through. And it's a phenomenal organization. It's a game changer for all high school strength coaches. If you're not a member, you need to get out there and become a member. The more members we have, the bigger voice we're going to have, and the more we're going to change. And so I would just encourage everyone to check out the website. And if you're not a member, become a member. But a couple of things I'm working on here in Iowa. We've got a conference coming up in December. It's December 1st. It's going to be at Johnston High School. Brian Luter out there does a phenomenal job, and he's got a great facility outfitted with a ton of power lift equipment. So we're going to go out there, and we've got some speakers. We've got Brian's going to speak. We've got Justin Decker, who is a high school strength coach up at Waterloo East. We've got yourself, Preston, is going to give us a 50-minute talk on his summer program. We've got Iowa State assistant strength coach for wrestling, Josh Beauregard. He's going to be talking about cues in the weight room. Jay Dahl, another high school coach in the area. Nick Krause is going to speak on Block Zero programming. So we just have a ton of speakers coming out to that event. And I think the biggest part of that event is not going to be when the speakers are speaking, but it's going to be at the round table. We've got about an hour and a half set aside during that time where we just want to have discussions as coaches of how we can make ourselves better. What areas are we struggling with? What areas do we need to improve on? What ideas can I take from you, or what parts of this idea can I take from you? And so I'm really looking forward to that part of it. And then a second project that I'm working on along with that, and I'm going to be speaking on it at the clinic, but is going to be starting some type of strength and conditioning competition here in Iowa. I don't want to call it a powerlifting meet or anything like that, because what I would really like to see is maybe we have bench, squat, deadlift, clean. I don't know the semantics of it there, but we have some strength side, but then we also have some speed and power side where we're going to do a vertical jump and a 40 and maybe a 5-10-5, and we set it up in kind of a combine style, but we also set some weight classes up. South Carolina does a great job with this. Micah Kurtz down there when he was in South Carolina, now he's down in Florida, but he ran the girls side of it. And they almost run it like I call it a golf competition, because you want the low score. So if you've got 5 athletes, whoever had the highest bench would score a 1 point, and second highest would get 2 points. And then maybe those bench pressers, they get to the 40, and their 40 isn't so great. So maybe now they're 5th or 6th, so they got a 5 and a 6 in that category. Well, then at the end of the day, we add up all those numbers, and whoever has the lowest score, meaning they place the highest in the most events, then that's going to be determined to be our champion. But I just want to get something started, because I feel like with strength and conditioning, it's a lot of practice. We don't have a lot of competitions where we get to go and compete against one another. So even if it's just competing against our own school or the other athletes in our school, or maybe it grows and then we compete against our rival, and then maybe we create regional competitions and eventually down the line have a state competition. But I'd love to start the conversation towards having something along those lines in the state of Iowa, so that we can give our athletes something to look forward to outside of, oh, well, my bench went up, my squat went up, my vertical went up, my 40 time went down. Well, what kind of competition can we give them to look forward to? Because we all know they don't want to play football and only practice for 9 weeks and then play a game at the end of 9 weeks to see if they've gotten any better. We know volleyball, they don't want to do the same thing. Same with track. They don't want to practice and never have a competition. So I think it would be really interested, and I know we've got lots of coaches on board already, so hopefully we can keep the momentum and get something going here in the state of Iowa. So those are 2 of the big projects I'm working on right now. along with just building a database of all the strength coaches in Iowa, high school strength coaches, so that we can do a better job of just connecting with each other.
I think you're on to a lot of awesome stuff there, Coach. And I know one of the things that you talk about, putting together these clinics and just getting more information out there is such a big deal for a state that's trying to getting strength coaches and being the norm within their high schools. Not every high school has a strength and conditioning coach. Not even some of them don't even have athletic trainers that are within their walls. So what are the ways that we're going to expand our career path so that we make a safe environment for our student athletes? And I'm excited for all the things that you're doing. And I think the big thing for people to do is to get involved, to look at membership as a possibility to be able to support, these type of efforts so that students across Iowa, students across the United States have the opportunity to be trained by people that are part of the profession. So I appreciate all that work, Coach.
Just piggybacking on that, and I love the name, the Big Time podcast as well, because a lot of people, the high school level isn't the glamorous. It's not you're not working with the professional athletes or things like that. And I've had the chance to work with some of those guys and guys that have gone on to play in the NFL or formerly in the NFL. And when you look at some of the other intangibles that are out there, I just really encourage some of the young guys and girls that are out there that are trying to decide what their career path is going to be. Are they going to pursue college? Are they going to pursue professional? The high school game is very, very viable, and it's awesome because what happens is a lot of times you're 22 and you don't have a family, and being able to be an intern and go do some of the things you have to do and work the hours you have to work, you can do that. But then as you start to change your values and change your priorities, and maybe now you start to have a kid or two or three kids or four kids in my case, you start to look at how can I be home more often, and some of the volatility out there as far as job security at the high school level, you generally don't have that. You're pretty secure in your job if you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing. You can provide good insurance for your family. You can have a good retirement when you do decide to retire. So I just encourage those that are looking, seek out a mentor. A guy like Jed Smith at UNI, he comes to mind right now, where he's been a high school strength coach. He's constantly telling those interns and pushing those interns that he has, or even his grad students, to, hey, you might want to think about and pursue the high school level because, one, it's growing, and two, there's a lot of good things as far as job security, pay, insurance, retirement that go along with the high school level. So that's my plug for the high school level. I encourage any of you listeners that are out there, if you're on the fence and you think that the pro route is the only way to go or the college is the big time, you can do some pretty big things at the high school level and have a huge impact. So keep that in mind.
Man, no doubt. Now that I've been at Mount Vernon a few years now, it's awesome to see the amount that you can invest within, athletics, but just students in general. Like any high school student that's taking your classes, man, it's really fun, really rewarding. One of the things that I would recommend to a lot of strength coaches too. So thanks for sharing that, Coach. So we're coming up towards the end of the show here, and we normally throw out about 5 questions at the end that you kind of rattle off some answers, and we'll move on from there. Here's question number 1. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book, I would say, is probably the Bible, just because it's so important to me with my faith. But if I had to choose another one, and this is going to sound corny, but Making the Big Time Where You Are, like I said, that's a prized possession of mine. And just the fact that I have a signed copy by Frosty, even though it's not addressed to me, that is one of my prized possessions because I've always tried to live that and tried to be happy where I'm at and make the most of where I'm at, and not try and always want what my neighbor has or want what somebody else has, but to look at the things I have and to make an impact there. So
awesome stuff. Person that has influenced you the most?
I would say probably in the beginning, Ron McKeefery. He was just so vital in my learning process and getting into the field of strength and conditioning. So I can never give Ron enough thank yous.
Favorite hobby outside of training?
Golf. That's an easy one. Love to golf. Wish I had more time for it.
15 minutes to train. What are you doing?
If I've got 15 minutes, I'm probably doing a push-pull circuit where I'm going to match up maybe some single-leg RDLs with some push-ups, and then maybe I'm going to do some single-leg squats with some pull-ups, but some type of upper-lower push-pull.
Very good. And then the last one here, small school coach who's killing it and deserves a shout-out.
I'm going to give two. I'm going to give one to Justin Decker up at Waterloo East High School. It's one of the larger schools in Iowa, so it's not necessarily a small school, but the guy is absolutely killing it up there. He's just making monsters that are just freakishly strong, and the guy's doing it the right way. He was just named District Employee of the Year. So that guy is just awesome and phenomenal when it comes to strength and conditioning. And then I'm going to throw a shout out your way, Preston, because I think that you're doing awesome things. You're doing big things. I wish when I was your age, I had the knowledge and experience that you have, and you're always seeking that out. I see you at conferences. We have conversations. I see you other places. So I'm going to give two shout outs, one to Justin and one to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Coach. That's something I'm really striving to be. My dad's been coaching for over 25 years, and one of the things that I've learned so much is continually learn. Man, he's always trying to figure out the best way, and that doesn't mean throw out all the old stuff, man. It just means, hey, there's got to be different ways that we look at this thing, and maybe how we used to do it isn't the best way to do it now. So I appreciate that. That's something that pretty cool coming from you, a guy that has so much experience and investing so much in strength and conditioning. Right now, I'd like you to throw out some of your contact info where people can get a hold of you, reach out, learn some more from you, and just catch up with you if there's any questions that they have. Yeah,
my email, probably the best email to reach at me is going to be coachjenkins44@gmail.com. That's the COACH Jenkins. JENKINS 44@gmail.com. And then my Twitter that I use, it's my own personal email or my own personal Twitter, but I also use it for the NHSSCA, is same thing. It's at Coach Jenkins 44. So those are probably two of the best ways. If you want to get a hold of me, shoot me an email. I'll get back to you. I try to have the 24-hour rule where I respond within 24 hours, but I would much rather talk on the phone. I think we can get a lot more accomplished. So reach out to me and let's have some conversations.
Sweet. Thank you for your time, Coach. It was a pleasure, and I think there are going to be a lot of people that are interested in what you have to say, and I hope some people reach out to you because I know I've got a few questions I'm going to ask you a little bit later on. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.